Hello, I'm Christopher Brannon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library, which is in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and the Cooperative Information Network, which is our consortium of about 27, 28 libraries in the Idaho and Washington region. And today, this presentation is called Making Pretty Filters, or Facets. We're going to be looking at a function of the Koha catalog and exploring what we can do with it to make it more user-friendly. Let's start off by taking a look at the catalog in the staff side of Koha. I'm going to do a basic search. Let's switch over to the catalog here. And I get some results. This is actually the koha-US demo website, so that's why we're only getting 12 results. But you can see over on the left-hand side, just like any good catalog, you're going to have options for filtering your results so you can weed out the things that you don't want. And we can see even with 12 results, we've got quite a bit of filters that are available to us. And this isn't just everything, but there's quite a bit. It's more than a page worth of filters on there. So one of the things I want to start off with is looking at the filters. What are some of the current issues? At least what are some of the current issues that I'm seeing, that I perceive? And to start off with, I notice that sometimes facets can be quite long and involve a lot of scrolling. This catalog, the demo catalog, only had a little bit over a page worth of facets showing, but you had to scroll down to see it all. If you are in a production server for a library that has a large collection, or in a consortium that has a much larger collection, those facets, which are built off of those results, can be even longer. So I can have a couple pages of facets at least. So there's quite a bit there. And having to scroll through those facets can get a little bit overwhelming. And you're just being thrown a bunch of information in your face all at once. So that can be a little overwhelming to the user. Some sections are condensed, and you have to click Show More to see more. So you may or may not have noticed that there are 3 sections in this result that have a Show More at the bottom of them. And that link just kind of blends in with the text. So if you're like me, you may not even notice those links there and realize there's a lot more information than it's showing. So there's quite a few more authors there to choose from. The topics, there's quite a bit more topics to choose from. And on the series, there are a few more there. So that's even more information to scroll through. Sometimes it can be difficult to see what facets are selected. So if you go in there and select a facet, like I'll pick fiction collection here. When you're looking at this page and just scanning over it, it does not stand out very well because it's showing an X at the end of that selection, which is text. It's blending in. Part of the problem with the facets as is out of the box is a lot of functionality blends in with the text. And it stands out a little bit better on some of these aspects in the OPAC than it does on the staff side, but overall, a lot of this blends in. When you click on a facet, the time it takes to reload the page makes you wonder if you actually clicked anything. On our demo server, we don't have a lot. So when you click on, like if I'm canceling this X, it doesn't take a lot of time. But if you're on a production server with a lot in your catalog, when you are loading or unloading a facet, when you're selecting or deselecting, your catalog is looking through all the results and gathering a bunch of information. So on a production server for an actual library or a consortium, that can take a little bit of time. And when you click on something and nothing's happening, it just sits there. You're wondering if it's working or not. And unless you're paying attention to the spinner up on the tab, which I rarely look at as a basic user, then you don't know what's happening. And it's always good to give some kind of response right away as to, you know, we're working on it. And right now, Koha does not have that particular functionality built in. So let's look at what we can do with the filters and make improvements on it so that it's easier for staff and for patrons to work with and navigate through. One of the things that we'll be doing with these modifications is adding functionality to sections. So the sections aren't just going to be these open sections and something that's, you know, just pouring out information and you have to scroll through. We're going to add a little bit of functionality to the different sections. So, you know, when I talk about sections, I'm talking about the different topics like availability, authors, item types, locations. We're going to add some functionality to those sections so that they'll expand and contract and be a little bit more user-friendly to approach and navigate through. We're going to expand everything in the sections that is hidden. So we're not going to have pieces of information that are hidden by those show more links that we're just kind of blending in. We'll have all of that available when you go into a section. We're going to rebuild the facets to look better and have actual checkboxes instead of an X at the end that kind of blends in with the rest of the text. And we'll show that those facets are in use with a checkbox. We'll make that very visible and evident. And then we'll automatically expand sections that have facets that are checked. So, you know, we're going to try and condense everything so we're not having to scroll a lot, but we don't want to have to search for the things that we have selected and figure out what we've already done. And then we're going to add a spinner to show that Koha is thinking, so you can actually know that you've clicked on something. This is something that I have worked on different aspects of Koha, particularly with the OPAC and the patron. It's not the, it might be the self-check, or I think it was the self-check that I've put some spinners in as well. So I've been adding spinners in different areas where I found there was a performance issue where it's taking time for Koha to load a page. Anytime I can throw in a spinner there after you've clicked on something, I think is very helpful to the person using the system, so they know that something is going on and it's not just hanging up or an internet issue or anything like that. They're not going to panic because nothing's happening. So let's take a look at what we can do with these filters. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to some code, and I'm going to grab the first part of my code here. And this first part of the code is basically going to place some headers around stray section titles so that we can control these later. It's also making this a little bit more like the opaque side of things. And I'll show you what I mean here. If I were to expand, or if I were to show the code for like the author's title here, it does have some code around it. It says, you know, span, ID, facet, authors. So there's some information around that. Around that text. If I go into the facet above it, the section above it, availability, that title does not have a span around it. So there's some inconsistency about what's going around those section headings in order to be able to have a consistent thing to grab and work with. So adding these headers are going to make a more consistent control for me to latch onto and work with. It's also going to be a little bit more consistent with the opaque, because if I go over the opaque is actually, let me do a search here, same search. If I look at the section headers here, they actually have headers around those. So I'm trying to keep things a little bit more consistent between the staff side and the opaque side when it comes to implementing this feature. So that's why I went with adding headers around those section titles. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. So I'm going to refresh this because we applied that code. And now if I look at availability, there's a header around it. I use H5 in this side. I didn't use an H3 like in the opaque. And if I look at this one, it has an H5 around it as well. So I got rid of some of the span and made it more consistently an H5 through there. So the coding is a little bit more consistent now with that, and we can apply some functionality to all those headers now that they all have headers. And that leads us to the next section of code that we're going to grab. So this section will add functionality to the headers for visibility and collapsing and expanding sections. It will also show the entire contents in those sections. Get rid of those show mores. So I'm going to save that. Start that search again. And now I'll go ahead and collapse that code. Now you can see that the page loaded with the sections. They've got these arrows next to them and they're linkable and they're expandable. And the show mores are gone. All the content is in that section now rather than having me click on a show more link that was kind of hidden in there. So everything is immediately available in that section. And I can expand and collapse. However, when I click on a filter, I clicked on something, but it doesn't show me what I've clicked on. So I've got to work with that. And if I do know where it is, it's still that X at the back end of the text there. So we're going to clear that. And go into the next piece of code here. This section will rebuild and replace facets with improved facets with checkboxes. So it's improving the look of those facets and making the selection indicators a little bit more evident rather than it just being a link. So again, looking at it, it's just a link. Doesn't indicate that you're turning anything on or off in Facets, which, if you're thinking about Facets, I usually think that, okay, there's things that I can switch on and off, and just clicking a link is not, it doesn't convey that kind of message. I like to have a checkbox. I like to have something there that I can see it's switched on or off. So to redo my search here, now when I open up a section, oh, did I apply that? I did not. I apply that. Now let's do the search. Go to topics. Now I've got checkboxes. Now I know what's off, completely off. However, if I check on something, again, things disappear. So we still need to work on that. And I still have the X at the end. So we're part of the way there. So this next section will change the facet checkbox to checked if it's in use. So we're getting rid of that X at the end, and now it's going to show that it's actually checked. Save that. Do my search, select something. And if I go back in there, now I have a checkbox. I don't have that X any longer. Looks a lot cleaner. It's easy to see what is checked and what is not. I think that looks a lot cleaner, looks a lot more professional. So that's done. Now, we're still dealing with the issue that when I select something, I don't know what's selected unless I go digging for it. So we'll take care of that with this next piece of code. Now, do a search, and I will select something. It refreshes the page, and that section is automatically expanded because it has something checked in it. So the code goes through and looks for things that have already been selected, and if it has something selected, it will expand its parent. So now that is going to show that until I remove that. We've got one more little snippet that we're going to add to this. This is the icing on the cake, if I may. And this is going to add a spinner to show that Koha is doing something after you click on it. Again, it's not so much noticeable in the demo site because there's not a lot of content for it to go through in the catalog. But with a library that has a lot more in the collection, or if you have a consortium, way much more in the collection, that can be significant, and you might be sitting there for a moment, and it's nice to know that Koha is actually doing something. So if I select a filter, you get a little spinner here. So that spinner stays there a lot longer when you actually have more content. And I'm going to demonstrate that. That I am going to demonstrate on our catalog, so you can see that now that we've seen all of the modifications together. Remember, okay. So if I do a search in our catalog, so I have these filters applied to our system, we have a lot more going on. We have, instead of 12 results, we have 3912. So 3,912 results on there. So I'm going to go to topics and I'm going to click on cats here, and you can see this is taking a little bit longer. And so it's nice to have that spinner there for that. Even if it's a small amount of time, it's still good to convey information to the user that something is going on. And so having that spinner is just a nice addition. All right, so that is it for the facet modifications. We've cleaned it up. We've made it so you don't have to scroll to see all the facet sections. You can open up the ones that are interest to you. You don't have hidden facets within there. You don't have to click on a show more to reveal extras. And you've got nice clean checkboxes that make it very evident that a facet is on or off. And it's responsive. It knows when there's something selected, so you don't have to go hunting for the things that you've turned on. And you've got an indicator to indicate that Koha is processing, all of which are huge improvements to the facets. I have, as I mentioned earlier, similar facets available for or facet enhancements for the OPAC. I'm not going to break it down like I did with the staff. It's fairly similar. The one thing that is not the same is building those headers around the different categories, because on the OPAC side, those are already there. So let me put those in up here. Save that. And now if I do a search on the OPAC and the catalog side, now we're getting the same types of enhancements. Expandable, everything's in there. Check boxes, click on it, we've got the spinner. And it automatically opens that section if a facet is selected already. So that's pretty much it for making your filters pretty. Making pretty filters, excuse me. Both of these jQuery enhancements are available in the jQuery library. The staff one is listed under 2.156, Enhanced Search Facets for Staff. And the OPAC one is in the OPAC section, so it's 4.10, Enhanced Search Facets for OPAC. And these, the jQuery will be included as well on notes for this presentation. And if you have any questions about this enhancement or any ideas to make it even better, by all means, please reach out to me. My email is at the bottom of this page, cbrannon@cdalibrary.org. And I would love to hear from you as to whether or not you found this helpful, if you think it's of benefit, or if you have any questions about it or improvements that you can make on this. But that's it for me. I'm Christopher Brannon, and thank you for your time.
Does anyone have any questions for Christopher in the room? I know there's a couple in the chat there. Fred asked, does the authors tab show all the authors? The list in the example ended with S. I think there are more than that. Christopher also answered in the chat that the results in the filters are still built on the results of that page. So it'll only show you in the filters for that page. David Nind said some really nice improvements.
Correction to that real quick. Heather reminded me, and I was remembering this too, that there is an actual preference in there, the facet max count that you can set, so you can have the facets built off of more or less than the actual results. So at some point in a previous upgrade, they parsed that out, but you're still limited to whatever that setting is set to. So no, it's not all authors, or none of the facets are built on all existing results. It's based off of either the page or the preference, if there's a separate preference for that.
Let's see. Rebecca asked, have you had a request from your staff to include an expand all or collapse all facet options?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. You mean something to expand all of those facets? If that's what you mean, no, I haven't had a request for that. No, everybody's been happy so far with this, and we've had this for a few years now. So I've had that in the jQuery library, but yeah, I've had no complaints.
TJ said, nice tutorial, and asked, did you add counts in your staff client?
Did I add counts?
Maybe of how many facets there are?
No,
I'm not sure.
I don't think I added anything to that. I think that is straight out of the box, because let's see here. I did this on the demo.
Well, you're looking for that. Rebecca did say yes to see all of them at once. That was what her question was.
Okay. Did I have that in my production? I don't remember. Take a look here, since I have time to kill.
While you're looking, let's see. Olivia said pretty filters indeed. Barbara will definitely add to our staff client. Victor said cool tips and ways to improve usability within the catalog. Thanks.
I'm not sure about the count. That could be something added. It could be a preference. I think it might be a preference. I don't remember building or putting in any jQuery for counts on that. So I am not sure, but I do see a difference between the production and what I put on the demo site. So there are no counts on there. So that wasn't part of this, and I don't think it was anything customized.
Okay. Any questions in the room? TJ said thanks for looking. Well, we're here. I just want to remind you, anyone who's watching online, that you can still email conferences at koha-US.org a picture of yourself attending the conference virtually for my collage that I'm making to go with the in-person picture that they took. I've got like 6 of us so far. Christopher, yours was great. I laughed when I saw it in a good way.
Well,
very creative.
I try.
Also, I was able to get your dashboard report to work nicely. It was not that hard to make it work for my library, although there's some fields that we don't use that I'm gonna replace with other things that we care about. But like we don't do the tax in district thing, but we do run a monthly report of our new purchase suggestions, which maybe is in there, but I didn't think it was. So that we can just have like one report that we run.
Okay.
Jason has a video or has a question for us in the Zoom chat. What's the best shade of lipstick to use on my facets to make them prettier?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, you could always you could always do something to make them stand out, maybe a deep red if you're really feeling spicy, but I tend to use just the colors that come out of the box. So oh, TJ found the preference display facet count. So yes, it was a preference setting for those numbers.
I was also just looking for that too. Victor asked, would you mind sharing the link to the code snippets?
And those will be actually, move some controls out of the way. These will be out on the notes tomorrow when they share. So, but if you search for enhanced search facets in the jQuery, if you search for Koha jQuery and go to the library, you can search on that page for enhanced search facets, and you'll find the one for the staff and for the OPAC.